If there is one thing I wish every person over 60 could hear before it is too late, it is this. Sometimes the smallest morning habit is not the thing that changes your life. Sometimes it simply opens the door to something far more important. I have lived long enough to watch people chase miracle foods, expensive supplements, and endless promises, only to overlook the quiet changes that truly reshape a life. And that is why I want to tell you about a man named Thomas Miller. I never forgot his story because every time I think about it, I wonder how many people are still waiting for hope while it is already standing quietly beside them. When Thomas reached the age of 103, he looked back at his life with gratitude, but he often said that nobody would have believed he would ever celebrate such an age. At 69, he was in a rehabilitation center after years of struggling with a serious liver illness. He told me he felt tired in a way that reached far beyond his body. He believed his best years were gone, and he expected the rest of his life to become smaller every season. Then something happened that he never expected. One afternoon, an old neighbor named Richard Hale walked through the door. They had not seen each other in almost 40 years. Thomas told me that the visit lasted only a few hours, but the thoughts it awakened stayed with him for decades. Richard did not bring medicine, and he did not speak like a doctor. Instead, he asked a few simple questions that Thomas could not forget. Why had he stopped believing his body deserved care? Why did he spend more time remembering disappointments than noticing the blessings that were still around him? Those questions stayed with Thomas long after Richard had gone home. During the months that followed, Thomas became curious again. He started reading books, exploring medical publications written for ordinary people, and following new research that scientists continued to study about healthy aging, nutrition, and daily habits. One small idea especially caught his attention. Every morning, he began adding a spoonful of pure cocoa powder to his hot black coffee without sugar. Some studies suggest that natural cocoa contains plant compounds that may help support healthy blood vessels, circulation, and brain function as part of an overall healthy lifestyle. Thomas always believed this simple drink became an important part of his new routine. Yet every time he told the story, he smiled gently and reminded me that the drink itself was never the greatest discovery. He always said that the real reason his life changed was something much deeper. And when I finally understood what he meant, I looked at my own life in a completely different way. I kept thinking about Thomas for many years because his story reminded me that life can change when we least expect it. I have met many older people from different places, and almost every one of them believed there came a moment when they had to decide whether they would simply count their remaining years or truly begin living again. Thomas often told me that his meeting with Richard was that moment. Before then, every morning felt heavy. He woke up thinking about the illness that had taken so much from him. He focused on what he could no longer do instead of the little things he could still enjoy. Richard noticed it almost immediately. He did not spend the afternoon talking about hospitals or medicines. Instead, he asked Thomas to remember the man he had been before fear became part of every day. Those words stayed in Thomas's heart. He once told me that they bothered him so much that he could hardly sleep that night. He realized he had spent years waiting for someone else to rescue him, while forgetting that small daily choices still belonged to him. That realization became the beginning of a completely different way of living. Thomas slowly filled his home with books that explained healthy eating in simple language. He read articles describing how researchers continue studying the relationship between natural foods, circulation, inflammation, and healthy aging. He never claimed to understand everything, but he enjoyed learning a little more every week. Among everything he discovered, one simple morning habit caught his attention. He began mixing one spoonful of pure cocoa powder into a cup of hot black coffee without sugar. Some studies suggest that cocoa contains flavonoids and other natural plant compounds that may help support healthy blood flow and normal brain function as part of an overall balanced lifestyle. Thomas liked the rich taste, but even more, he liked the feeling that every morning started with purpose instead of despair. Still, whenever someone praised the drink as though it were the entire secret, he gently shook his head. He would smile and say, "If you stop listening now, you will miss the part that changed everything." I asked him many times what he meant, but he always laughed softly and told me to be patient. He believed that many people spend their whole lives searching for the perfect food, while ignoring the burden they carry deep inside their hearts. At first, I did not understand those words at all. I thought he was only trying to sound mysterious. Years later, when he finally explained what happened after that visit from Richard, I realized why he refused to reveal the answer too early, and it changed the way I looked at both health and happiness. There was something about the way Thomas spoke that made people lean a little closer. He never sounded like a man trying to convince anyone. He simply shared what he had observed after many years of paying attention. He told me that the morning coffee with pure cocoa became a quiet ritual, not because he expected magic, but because it reminded him that every new day was another chance to care for himself. While reading books and articles written for ordinary people, he found that researchers continue studying the natural compounds in cocoa, especially flavonoids and polyphenols. Some studies suggest these plant compounds may help support healthy blood vessels, circulation, and normal brain function as part of an overall healthy lifestyle. Thomas would smile and say that whether every study proved true or not, beginning his morning with intention already made him feel different. He prepared the drink the same way almost every day. He poured hot black coffee into his favorite cup, added 1 spoonful of pure unsweetened cocoa powder, stirred it slowly, and drank it without sugar. Sometimes he enjoyed it before taking a gentle walk outside, even if the walk lasted only 15 or 20 minutes. He believed the fresh air, the quiet movement, and the warm drink belonged together like old friends. Yet he also reminded everyone that no drink could replace balanced meals, enough protein, colorful vegetables, fresh fruit, or regular movement. Those simple habits work together, never alone. As the months passed, Thomas noticed that he had more energy to enjoy ordinary moments again. He spent more time in his garden, laughed more often with neighbors, and no longer counted every difficult day as proof that his future was already decided. I have seen many older people discover something similar. Some loved apples from their own trees, others never missed a bowl of oatmeal, while a few started every morning with berries or walnuts. Their favorite foods were often different, but their attitude was surprisingly alike. They treated each day as another opportunity instead of another burden. Even then, Thomas insisted that people were paying attention to the wrong part of his story. Whenever someone asked whether cocoa was the secret that helped him reach 103, he gently shook his head. "No," he would say with a peaceful smile. "That cup only reminds me of the promise I made to myself after Richard visited. The real change happened somewhere no one could see." Every time he said those words, I became more curious. I wondered what invisible change could possibly matter, more than years of careful eating, steady movement, and everything he had learned. When he finally trusted me enough to explain it, I understood why he had protected that answer for so long. As more people heard Thomas's story, I noticed that many of them made the same mistake. They became fascinated by the cocoa and forgot everything else. Some even asked him if drinking one special cup every morning was enough to change their lives. Thomas would smile kindly because he understood why they asked. We all want simple answers, especially after years of worrying about our health. But he always reminded them that one habit, no matter how pleasant, could never carry the whole weight of a healthy life. He believed that the greatest changes come when many small choices quietly support one another day after day. He often explained that he never treated his morning coffee as a miracle. It was simply the first step in a routine that included balanced meals, enough protein to help support his muscles, colorful vegetables, fruit in sensible portions, regular walks, and plenty of restful sleep whenever possible. Some studies suggest that natural cocoa may help support healthy circulation and blood vessel function because of its flavonoids. But researchers continue studying exactly how these compounds affect different people over time. Thomas appreciated those findings, yet he never claimed that cocoa could solve every problem. He would gently remind people that our bodies are wonderfully complex, and no single food can replace an overall healthy lifestyle or medical care when it is needed. I remember one afternoon when someone proudly told him that they had started drinking cocoa with sweet flavored coffee, whipped cream, and several spoonfuls of sugar because they believed the cocoa would cancel everything else. Thomas laughed softly, not to embarrass them, but because the misunderstanding was so common. He said that adding pure, unsweetened cocoa to black coffee worked well for him because it fit naturally into his overall way of eating, not because it gave him permission to ignore every other habit. Then he became quiet for a moment. His face changed, and I could tell he was thinking about something much deeper. He looked at me and said, "Do you know what surprised me the most? I spent years studying food, yet the heaviest thing I carried was never on my plate." Those words stayed with me. He explained that while he was carefully choosing what to eat, he was still waking up every morning carrying old disappointments, anger, regret, and sadness that had followed him for decades. He believed those feelings made every day seem heavier than it truly was. I listened carefully because I sensed that we were finally approaching the part of his story he had protected for so many years. What happened next surprised me far more than anything he had ever told me about coffee, cocoa, or nutrition, and it completely changed the meaning of everything that came before. The day Thomas finally told me the rest of his story, I understood why he had never rushed to explain it. He said that after Richard left the rehabilitation center, he expected to feel inspired for a few days and then return to his old habits. Instead, something inside him refused to stay the same. Every morning, after preparing his coffee with pure cocoa, he sat quietly by the window before beginning the rest of his day. At first, he simply watched the sunrise. Then he started thinking about the people he had not spoken to for years. Some had disappointed him. Some had betrayed his trust. Others had simply drifted away as life became busy. He realized that although his body had been carrying illness, his heart had been carrying something just as heavy for far longer. Thomas often told me that he had spent decades believing those old memories no longer mattered. Yet the moment he allowed himself to face them honestly, he understood how much space they still occupied in his mind. He never claimed that changing his thoughts could cure a disease, and he always encouraged people to continue working with their healthcare professionals. What he said was much simpler. He believed that living every day with constant anger, bitterness, or regret made it difficult for him to enjoy the life that still remained. Little by little, he began a quiet practice that nobody else could see. Every morning he thought of one person and sincerely wished them peace, even if forgiving them felt impossible at first. Some mornings, the hardest person to forgive was himself. He remembered business decisions he regretted, friendships he had neglected, and opportunities he had wasted. Instead of repeating those painful memories again and again, he slowly learned to accept that the past could not be rewritten. I have watched many older people over the years, and I noticed something similar. The ones who remained warm, curious, and kind often carried themselves more lightly than those who held tightly to every disappointment. Their favorite foods were different. Their daily routines were different, but they all seemed to wake each morning with a willingness to begin again. Thomas believed that this inner change gave new meaning to every healthy habit he practiced. His morning cocoa no longer represented a search for a miracle. It became a quiet reminder that caring for the body and caring for the heart could happen together. He often smiled as he finished his coffee and whispered a few words of gratitude before stepping outside for his walk. Watching him, I realized that the most remarkable transformation was not how he prepared his drink, but how he learned to greet each new day without carrying yesterday's weight. Still, there was one final lesson he wanted every person over 60 to hear, and he believed it was the easiest place for anyone to begin tomorrow morning. Thomas always told me that the hardest part was not learning a new habit. The hardest part was believing that small changes still mattered after so many difficult years. I have thought about those words many times because they remind me of so many wonderful people I have met throughout my long life. Some believed they were simply too old to begin again. Others felt that if they could not change everything at once, there was no point in changing anything. Thomas gently disagreed. He believed that every peaceful morning was built from one simple choice, followed by another. If someone asked him where to begin, he never handed them a complicated plan. He simply shared what worked for him and encouraged them to speak with their healthcare professional before making important changes, especially if they were living with a medical condition or taking medication. He would say that every morning he prepared a cup of hot black coffee, stirred in one spoonful of pure unsweetened cocoa powder, and enjoyed it slowly without adding sugar. Some studies suggest that cocoa contains natural flavonoids that may help support healthy circulation as part of a balanced lifestyle, although researchers continue studying their long-term effects. After finishing his drink, he usually went outside for a gentle walk. Some mornings it lasted only 15 minutes, while other days he stayed out longer because he enjoyed the fresh air. He often told me that the walk was never about walking fast. It was about reminding himself that his body was made to keep moving in whatever way felt comfortable and appropriate for him. When he returned home, he chose simple meals with enough protein, vegetables, fruit, and other wholesome foods, instead of searching for complicated diets. He paid attention to regular sleep, drank enough water throughout the day, and tried not to let constant worry become his closest companion. Yet before any of those habits began, there was one quiet moment that Thomas never skipped. He closed his eyes for a minute and thought of three things he was grateful for. Sometimes they were very ordinary things, like hearing birds outside the window or enjoying a warm cup in his hands. Other days he silently forgave someone who had hurt him many years before, even if he had to repeat that choice again the next morning. Watching him taught me that gratitude and forgiveness are not dramatic events. They are gentle practices that slowly shape the way we experience each day. Thomas believed that caring for the body and caring for the heart belonged together, and after seeing the peace that filled his later years, I found myself wondering whether that quiet combination was the most valuable lesson he had discovered. The final words he shared with me are the ones I hope every older person hears before giving up on tomorrow. When I think back to the beginning of Thomas's story, I remember how certain he was that his best days had already passed. He was sitting in a rehabilitation center at 69, convinced that life had become nothing more than waiting for time to run out. If someone had told him that he would celebrate his 103rd birthday while still enjoying his morning routine, taking gentle walks, and greeting each day with gratitude, he would have smiled politely and never believed a word of it. Yet life has a quiet way of surprising us when we remain open to change. Thomas never claimed that one drink or one habit transformed everything. He believed that his mornings became powerful because many small choices came together. His cup of black coffee with pure, unsweetened cocoa reminded him to begin the day with care. His balanced meals helped him nourish his body. His daily walks kept him connected with movement and fresh air. Most importantly, he chose every morning to leave yesterday where it belonged. He practiced gratitude before complaining. He looked for kindness before criticism. He forgave a little more each day, including himself. That combination gave him a peace I could see every time we spoke. Throughout my long life, I have met many people who reached 90, 100, or even beyond. Their favorite foods were not always the same, and their daily routines often looked different, but one beautiful habit appeared again and again. They never stopped believing that today still mattered. They understood that caring for the body and caring for the heart could walk side by side. I hope Thomas's story reminds you that it is never too late to make one gentle change. Perhaps tomorrow morning you will prepare your breakfast with a little more care. Perhaps you will take a short walk, call an old friend, or simply sit quietly and think about something that still fills your heart with gratitude. Small moments have a way of becoming beautiful years. Thank you for spending this time with me. I always treasure these conversations because every story we share may bring hope to someone who truly needs it today. If this story touched your heart, I would be honored if you subscribe to this channel and join me again. There are many more simple lessons I have gathered over the decades from remarkable people whose quiet habits taught me that healthy aging is not about chasing perfection. It is about choosing, one peaceful morning at a time, to keep caring for the precious life we have been given.